This is a
Three,
great start.
2, 1. Are we ready to go?
Why'd you count down to are we ready to go?
Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to Great Stories Comic Shop Talk. It's been forever and a day since we've met and had a discussion, and I'm here with our main man, Ken,
Hey, Chris.
from the Crank File, comic extraordinaire right here. So we have some pretty good stuff lined up, I think. We're all pent up with like all this like stuff to like, that's been in the backlog, basically.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's we had a whole month without comics at the very start of the pandemic. It was from like March to May, right? They were like basically just like no comics being published.
That's right. So maybe people haven't missed out on as much as we think, right?
Or maybe people have missed that, like just missed having that for so long that they're just itching to get back in. I know for me personally, that was how it was. Like as soon as like comics were coming back to the shops and shops were able to start opening again and have people in, I know
Absolutely.
I was back in the shops as soon as I could.
Same here, but then again, I have no choice.
You never left.
But yeah, it's true. I mean, with so much time on people's hands, they find themselves at home, really not a whole lot to do. There's no better time than getting caught up and really getting into a good story.
I agree. I think that you
And-
give us some time to go back, catch up with some books that I was interested in and didn't really have the time to keep up with because of the weekly grind of just like new books every week and something new. It was
That's
nice
right.
to get a little break to catch up on some of these things. I imagine it must have been frustrating for the people that were reading. Like I know some of the stories that I had been reading consistently up until that point where everything got shut down. It was very jarring to like all of a sudden to like be cut off from that storyline, only to like have to try to pick up the pieces again a few months later.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that disjointedness. I mean, I think that kind of lends to a lot of the argument that some people have where they prefer graphic novel novelizations as opposed to a serialized version.
Yeah, I think the reading experience is definitely different, and for certain stories, it works better having be able to binge it all at one time instead of having to do the serialized, wait a month, get a piece, wait a month. Personally, I kind of liked it. I did actually enjoy having just like a little bit of a break. It feels like we spend so much time just reading comics.
Yeah.
It's good to like reassess and like take stock, and if nothing else, this has really made us reassess like what's really important. But
Yeah.
as things have kind of starting to feel a little bit more normal, and we start doing things like this that make it further feel a little more normal. It's nice to have to come back, have comics to talk about.
Absolutely. I know that I found myself dwelling on too many things over the last few months, and it's just nice to have that escapism again. And so that's why I'm really happy to be here talking with you and to our audience. So I know we have like a big lineup, and this is obviously just the first part of it.
Sure.
But let's talk about what our first subject's going to be in the comeback.
So the first story we're going to talk about is Amazing Spider-Man.
Amazing Spider-Man.
Feels very appropriate. Come back with Amazing Spider-Man.
Yep.
We're going back to the Sins Rising. Is it Sins Rising? Sins Rising, right?
Sins Rising.
Sins Rising
Yes.
storyline.
Yes.
There's been a bunch of Sins storylines.
Yep.
So the Sins Rising. This is one actually I haven't been reading. So I started reading the Spencer's run on Amazing Spider-Man.
Yep.
And I thought it was really fun. It was really a nice take, but it was just kind of there wasn't a lot of substance. It just felt like a little light, a little airy.
Yep.
This is not that. This is completely different.
No.
And you actually were the one that recommended that we talk about Sins Rising. And personally, I was a little skeptical at first because just in general, the Sins storylines haven't been very well received. The original Sins Past, which dealt with the retconning of Gwen Stacy, where she got pregnant with Norman Osborn's like twins, and like she had these babies that Peter wasn't even aware about.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of this that like felt like it was kind of tarnishing Gwen's like Gwen's always had that image of being like the pure perfect girl.
Yep.
Who was kind of died too young.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of fans were pretty outraged that her image was tarnished like that.
Sure.
With the storyline, and it didn't do very well.
Yep.
And then they had Sins Remembered, which further explored the lives of the twins after they had grown up. Basically, they had inherited some of the goblin's powers through his genetics. So they had like super strength, super healing, but also as part of the super healing that was it didn't quite work right because it was mixed with Gwen Stacy's DNA. They would age rapidly, and it was really weird, just really bizarre twist in like why would the creators, why would the like the heads out of Marvel make these decisions
Right.
to do this? So when I heard about the Sins Rising storyline, I thought maybe they're working to like correct some of these mistakes they made in the past, correct some of the sins, their past sins, as it were.
So, just to help me along, because I've never read these particular storylines that you're mentioning. When were these written in the Marvel timelines, roughly?
They were probably sometime in the mid 2000s. I want to say like 2005-ish.
Okay. And did they come in quick succession and then?
They did.
Okay.
I think Sins Past came out and like Sins Remembered. Sins Past came out in Amazing Spider-Man,
Yep.
and then Sins Remembered was like a follow-up in Spectacular Spider-Man,
Okay.
which was kind of being published concurrently at the time.
Okay, so for a lot of the audience, especially if you're a little bit newer to comics, this is going to be fresh, just like it was for me, only in the sense that I wasn't a solid Amazing Spider-Man reader in that era. So for me, I wasn't coming in maybe with some of those preconceptions about what this could be, and just having just kind of a fresh outlook
Sure.
on it, right? This was completely new. The character was completely new.
The Sin Eater character.
The Sin Eater character was new to me.
So we should talk about this because
Yes.
he's kind of like the focal point so far,
Yes.
the main antagonist of this this plot line.
Yes.
So Sin Eater, he's a dude that just has like this gun apparently, and he's going around just like offing the villains around town. And Spider-Man's obviously having none of this, right?
Sure.
But
He's got another Frank Castle on his hands.
right, he's got another someone going
Yeah.
around trying to just like punish the people that
Yeah.
cleansing, as he says, cleansing them of his sins.
Yes.
But what we're finding is that he's not actually killing them. The Sin Eater is like shooting him with a special gun. He's actually just like kind of like absorbing their sins, like almost cleansing them
Yep.
of their sins, leaving behind like a remorseful, reformed individual,
Yeah.
but also without powers.
Right. Yes. Absent of their powers, reborn, so to speak.
Yeah, reborn's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Almost like a Lazarus thing going on here.
Yeah.
So, very interesting. And now, what is his motivation outside of just cleansing sins? Do you think that there's like a larger thing at play here? Is there someone working behind the scenes?
I mean, obviously, there's always a greater scheme, isn't there?
Yes.
And it's the character that they introduced all the way back when this particular Spencer run started, with this character Kindred. Kindred's this kind of creepy mummy-looking guy, right? He's got like the Green Goblin hood. He looks like he's kind of decomposing. He's got like the centipedes and stuff. We don't really know who this character is. He was introduced early on. He's been a constant background threat, but they've never actually revealed who this character is. And he seems to be the one that's giving orders to Sin Eater and telling him, like, this great, he's part of this greater plan. So Sin Eater actually doesn't really seem to have any like primary motivation other than fulfilling what the orders he's being given by this Kindred character. And part of, I think, what's really interesting about this arc, I think what really makes this arc stand out, beyond the fact that it's just very grim and dark, is the moral questions that it raises.
Yeah.
Spider-Man has always held himself as that superhero that would never cross that line. Right. He's not going to kill anybody.
Yep.
The closest he ever came was when the Green Goblin had basically, he held him responsible for killing Gwen Stacy after he pushed Gwen Stacy off the bridge.
Yep.
Spider-Man tried to save her and subsequently broke her neck, unable to catch her in time after hitting her with a web.
Right.
It was the only time that Spider-Man had been close to saying, like, This has got to stop. You know, you killed my woman.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get revenge.
Right.
And he was dead set on at that point on killing the Green Goblin, but he didn't, because that's I think part and parcel to that character.
Right. Right. It would betray everything he stood for, and eventually, that overrode everything.
Yes.
Now, what I find interesting is, so you've got this Sin Eater character who, now are you familiar with the older stories with the Sin Eater?
Just vaguely, like the story that I know is that he was just basically basically more like a Punisher, just like street level character. Didn't really have superpowers. He
Yep.
didn't have this sin cleansing gun that he has currently. He just basically go around just like beating up no-gooders.
Yep. Okay. So he's really, this is like a completely different iteration of the Sin Eater to begin with. He's out there, and what I find to be kind of like an underlying theme is that he's building almost like this cult. It's a
Yes.
cult of followers.
Right.
Right? And you see through the progression is that like the more and more people he quote unquote cleanses, the larger the cult grows, and it seems like, you know, Spider-Man is going to be washed under the waves of this. Like it's taken on a life of its own.
True.
And he can't. There's no seeming way to stop it, right? And I think even in the eyes of the regular people that are out there, they're not really seeing this as a bad thing necessarily.
No,
Right?
they're cheering him. The people around here are seeing Sin Eater commit these acts of, well, murder, I guess, but and they're cheering him on.
Yeah.
And they're sort of looking at Spider-Man, who's, I guess, is like, hey man, you're ineffectual.
Yeah.
You know, you're not getting stuff done. Look, this guy's getting results.
Right.
And
He's
he
taking
is,
guys who are actually like dangerous to the public,
Getting them off the street.
and getting them off the street.
they're no longer threats anymore.
Right. Not actually killing them. Like he's actually, it's almost some weird paradox.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah.
And it's interesting because as part of it, as he's cleansing these supervillains and cleansing of both their sins and their powers, he's actually taking on the powers. And interesting enough,
Yeah.
he's also then able to transfer that power to his followers, which I think is a very, is very interesting. This concept of, this horde gaining power just by like following the Sin Eater.
Right.
There's something very relevant to that kind of symbolism. It definitely feels like a metaphor for some more things that are more relevant today, as far as like taking on a cause, wearing a mask,
Right.
and being able to derive power because of someone that you follow, and
Right.
It does raise these moral questions to Spider-Man, because Spider-Man really doesn't know what to make of it either. Part of him is like, he can't believe it, but then at the same time, how could he not? It's just like,
Yeah.
it doesn't surprise him at all that these people, like, the people that he protects, the people that look up to him, are also kind of now looking at this other guy as like a hero.
Right. Right. And now we've come through a few issues of this arc, and the most recent issue kind of deals with something that's a lot more close to home and will cause more moral conundrums for Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and that is Norman Osborn becomes the target of the Sin Eater.
Yeah, and I think this really makes sense. As well as explaining the other Sin stories, they all revolved around Norman Osborn, and all the pain that he's caused both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, throughout his life.
Yep.
Prior to Sin Eater raiding the Ravencroft to kind of carry out this assault mission on capturing Norman Osborn for whatever nefarious purposes they have.
Yep.
There's a almost like an intervention that's held, and a lot of the Spider family comes out of the woodwork to have very frank discussions with Spider-Man about what is your purpose, what is your end goal.
Yep.
This guy wants to go in, he wants to get rid of your greatest threat. Madame Web is in one of the issues, and she says, in all the realities, in all different universes, in each one, Spider-Man falls at the hands of the Green Goblin or Norman Osborn.
Right.
This guy wants to go out. He's not going to kill him. He's just going to go and cleanse him of his sins. Why not just let him?
Right.
And does that, and what Peter, I think, is grappling with is, does his inaction make him culpable?
Right, because he's not being asked to really do anything himself that it would be beyond his moral code.
Right. It's not,
Just
they're not saying like, hey,
look the other way.
just let this happen,
Yep.
look the other way,
Yep.
and it's going to work out way better for you
Yep.
and probably for the rest of the world.
Right.
It's kind of like, would you kill baby Hitler kind of thing, right?
Right. Right.
Like, would you just like, you wouldn't really actually, well, I guess, like, would you just like stand by? I mean, you wouldn't have to do anything. You don't,
Right.
I mean, that situation, you're
Right.
not even pulling the trigger.
Right. And where do you think this is going to go? I mean, clearly we're not at the end of the arc, although we seem to be kind of reaching pretty close to a crescendo here.
Sure. I think it's going to lead to a couple things. Well, one of the other stories that's running through the background is the subplot's going is Peter Parker planning to ask Mary Jane to marry him. We see him with like an engagement ring,
Yep.
calling her like very emotional. You can tell this has been a decision that's been weighing heavily on his mind for a while.
Yep.
And it just seems like there's never been an opportunity for him to do it. I think that what's going to happen is we're going to see probably the death of Norman Osborn. And I don't know if it's going to be at the hands of Spider-Man, but maybe Spider-Man's greatest sin is allowing him to continue to live.
Wow. That would be quite a shocker in my mind. I was not anticipating your answer there.
So I don't really have anything to back that up. I just like,
Yeah.
kind of like where the story's going. Spider-Man's never crossed that line, which makes me think that that's not what's going to happen. I mean,
Yep.
he's never in his past been able to cross that line. But
Right.
it would be, a crazy twist if he finally did.
It would be, and also just the fact that, not that it's really completely central to the storyline, but the ripple effect of something like that. What happens for Ravencroft? Ravencroft was a topic we discussed actually before we ended up taking this regrettable COVID break. Right?
Yeah, the COVID hiatus.
The COVID hiatus, so there are a lot of things going on at that institute right now, which we won't get into that discussion here for this session. But Norman Osborn is the head of that institute right now.
Yeah.
So what happens for Ravencroft? So there could be a lot of ripple effects coming out of that if what you say happens, if your prediction comes to light.
That's true. I mean, he's clearly had ulterior motives. Like he's not being the director of Ravencroft for like purely good, out of the goodness of his heart.
What, he doesn't act altruistically?
Yeah.
Come on.
Come on, it's Norman Osborn. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that. Well, what do you think is going to happen?
Honestly, I have actively prevented myself because I've enjoyed the storyline so much that I don't want to assign an ending to the story. I've actually really just immersed myself, and I just want to see where it goes and not have any preconceptions. So, yeah, I haven't really given it much thought.
Okay.
Just kind of along for the ride and just enjoying it.
Do you have any theories about who Kindred is?
I have thought about that. Honestly, I'm not really sure. What if it was Norman Osborn? What if this was a way for him to get into Spider-Man's head, and this was a ploy the whole time?
That he's Kindred?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting take.
Yeah. Not exactly where I'd put my money, but it would be an interesting plot twist. Either way, I think this is an excellent storyline. I think people who maybe fell out of reading Amazing Spider-Man and are looking to get a jumping on point, this would be definitely the place, especially after kind of a little bit of a flat run for a while.
Yeah.
Even under Spencer.
Yeah. It was kind of like for a bit. It was like a bit buddy with like the kind of quirky relationship between like him and Boomerang.
Boomerang, yes.
Yeah. Which is fun. Like, yeah, it was a really fun. I think that's like what we expected from Nick Spencer. This was like not at all what I expected from like a Nick Spencer Spider-Man. This like reminds me of like Kraven's Last Hunt. Something that really delves more into like the psychological nature of Spider-Man, where he's really forced to question his motivations. He has to question his moral values, and we as readers are forced to question our own as well. Like, where do we? I mean, some part of me is like, I'm actually with the rest of the Spider-Man team, where I'm like, yeah, man, just let him do it.
Let it happen.
Just let it go.
Yeah. Yep. And that's kind of where I'm inclined to also fall as well.
But Spider-Man, you always think like he's not going to be the guy to do it. But what if he is this time? What if he is this time? Is the right thing to do? Is actually the morally right thing to do to let somebody get murdered?
Well,
or not murdered, but cleansed or whatever.
Spencer's history is not exactly to to be predictable with taking staple characters and put them on a track that is kind of linear, right? He's dropped Captain America down a rabbit hole that a lot of people are really upset with. So he's a guy who's definitely willing to kind of shake the pillars of everything you know to be true in the comic world. So we'll see what he has planned for us. But definitely, you guys should be jumping on this one. I'll tell you, you won't regret it.
I like
you won't
that.
Regret it.
He made Cap Hydra. I mean, like, we have Spidey cross that line. Is that
I don't
too
think
far for him?
I doubt it. I think all bets are off. So thank you so much for joining us for this segment. We're going to continue on. Ken's got some surprises for us and some good conversations.
I do?
Yeah, you do, right? You got some other conversations going with some other folks.
Oh, that would be surprising.
And probably some faces you miss dearly, but we won't. We're not going to blow the surprise. It's not much of a surprise for you. But anyway, thanks for watching this segment, and we'll be doing our videos, by the way, in both short form and long form, because I know a lot of you out there like to have your 10, 15-minute videos. So we're going to start cutting this up and doing something a little bit different for you. So we hope you like it, and we'll see you real soon.